Well, welcome to Real Moms Only. Super excited to be here, joined with my daughter, Daly K. DiNatale. Episode 9. Listen, recently I was invited to speak at a mom's group. So much fun. Lots of young moms there, all of them with children, at least one or two under the age of 5. Most of them, in their first decade of being married, first one or two kids that they're really trying to get this parenting, mom, wifing thing down. So they invited me to come speak. You came along.
I did.
It was super fun. And they had a series of questions that they were studying through a book in the Bible, trying to learn about contentment. And so they were asking questions about this. And I thought that some of those questions might be helpful for our listeners. So Daly K is going to ask the questions. We're going to talk through some of them today.
Yeah, and honestly, the challenges that you have as a young mom or someone with children under the ages of 10 or 10 and under, I mean, you're just finding who you are, and then you're also raising children who are finding out who they are. Mm-hmm. And there's so many different new complex emotional issues that you get into when your children are, coming out of the most adorable elementary age, and into the preteen years. So yeah, we've got some really fun questions for you today.
But if you have children that are older, or maybe even your children have grown and flown the nest, we're going to be talking about some of that today too. So stay tuned.
True, of course. It's funny. We always think, oh, well, maybe we'll only talk about this, that, or the other. But there's so much that applies to every age range.
Yeah.
So
yeah. All right, let's get at it, Dale.
All right. So here's some questions. We're going to start off strong. What are some of the pitfalls of discontentment that can really hurt parenting and or a marriage?
So sometimes as a mom, wife, we feel like we're doing so much and it's just never enough. How do we help settle those feelings of being discontent about ourselves or where we're at or what's going on in our parenting or marriage? And I think that the first and most important thing is that, you and your husband, you are both very different people. But you are sometimes going to come at an issue from completely separate places. I remember I have a dear friend of mine growing up. She struggled with physical abuse in her house. Mm-hmm. So when she had children, she didn't want anything to do with spanking. That was just going to be off limits. And I think her husband was fine with that, but he was okay with spanking. So they had to fight. So they both, it was a very big thing because of how she felt growing up. And so first you have to realize that you are both on the same team.
Right.
You are both for each other and you are both for the best in your kids. And you have to recognize that while you might not always perfectly agree on how things are going to be done, you're going to have to come to a meeting of the minds and really discuss earnestly what's the best way.
That is a huge pitfall of discontentment with your spouse because they might see something differently than you.
Yes. So early on, it was great. Growing up, I had a dear friend of mine, Beth, and her parents were so wise and wonderful. And I don't remember how or when they shared this with me, but they shared with me that the way they came at arguments and challenges with each other was they had to rate things. So they would rate how strongly they felt about this certain answer on a scale of 1 to 10. Okay. 1, I do not care. 10, this is life or death for me. Now, this system only works if everything isn't a 10 because you're trying to win all the time.
Oh, well,
this system only works if,
to be honest,
right, if both people are willing to go, okay, I really feel like this is a 7 or 8. And the other person says, well, I really feel like this is a 3 or 4. Well, then we might lean more towards how important this is for me.
I need to use that.
In 32 years of being married, there are only 2 times that I have said something was a 10 and I strongly disagreed and we went with what my husband said to do anyways. And I can say in both cases, it wound up that he was right and I was wrong.
Of all things.
But that's how we kind of come to a meeting of the minds, because I don't think that it's right to just say, well, whatever he says is right, because that discounts how very valid some of the wife might feel about something. And it's not right to say, well, happy wife, happy life, whatever makes her happy.
Yeah, that's kind of true too, I feel like.
You need both mindsets, both outlooks to come to a right decision. And first of all, you got to realize that sometimes you're going to make mistakes anyways. So that's okay. But what are the pitfalls of being discontent? Not recognizing that you guys are on the same team, that you need to be for each other. And this can really hurt your marriage or your parenting because you are, it's if you're playing baseball, if your own team is,
not really playing for you.
yeah, tagging you out, like this is not a good thing,
Sorry.
if they're running touchdowns to the other side of the field, that's not good.
No.
You got it. So all of these things,
Have to communicate that too. I like that.
Communication is key, and just always recognize you guys are for one another and for whatever's best for the family. And as long as there's enough humility involved where you can say, look, we're on the same team. So many times David and I have argued about something and he looks at me and he goes, we're both saying the same thing. And I'm like, oh, you're right. Sorry. I was just passionate about what I was feeling, but if you recognize that you are on the same
Use
team.
the scale too. I love that.
Yeah, give it a real number. You got to be honest about it. But if you give it a number, it helps the other person realize, like, wow, this is really important to her. And I'm arguing over something that really isn't that important to me. Why am I arguing about this?
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah, those things can really help.
Our next question would be, how do you help your kids find their own contentment to help them not get stuck in jealousy or comparison?
Okay, there's a couple of things you can do here, but the first thing that you have to realize is no matter how old your children are, you are not in charge of their heart. Their heart, their emotions are theirs. Now, you can teach and train and lead them to try and have self-control over these things, or to recognize and call out their feelings and try and wrestle with them a bit, but you're not going to be able to help your child find their own contentment. They're going to have to work on that a lot themselves. Think about it. Could your partner truly help you be content? Could your best friend truly help you be content? No, you gotta wrestle with that inside yourself. But
yeah,
one thing you can do is call out their strengths. For example, I got a little guy right now. He's brilliant at math. Not so good at spelling. We probably won't win the National Spelling Bee. But I will say to him all the time, hey, you know what? You are really good at math. Like, that's amazing. Now, we're going to work a little bit more on these spelling words because that is important, But listen, mom's terrible at math. I am not good at math. Like, you naturally get this. This is a great thing. The reason I'm telling you that is calling out your own weaknesses makes it okay for them to have a weakness as well. Makes them think everybody's not
helping them realize that mom and dad aren't perfect.
Yeah, definitely.
Can help.
Yeah, it helps them be content. So if you're talking about if you want to try and lead them, helping them understand that, like, I can't operate the TV by myself in my own home. I don't know what I'm going to do when all my kids
Okay, but
grow
your
up.
TV is very difficult.
But this is a simple thing, right? And then the kids, when I'm asking them for help with something, asking a kid for help with something is also admitting a weakness that you need them, and it's okay for you to have a weakness. So helping kids.
I do agree. And I mean, it is genuine in our house. We do need help when there's so many things to get done and all that. But I love the fact that, you're calling out the things that they're good at. You're calling out the things that they are helpful for, and building out contentment in themselves as a person, I think, is always so important.
So if a kid is struggling with discontentment because they're looking at their brother who's a better lacrosse player,
or their best friend that has a cooler phone. Yeah,
that happens. Or a nicer car or what have you. Focusing on the things that you do have, the things that you are good at. Like, this is good practice for us as parents. It's great practice for them as kids. And I will tell you that a trap I often fall into and have to recognize it very quickly is when a kid says, so-and-so is driving a brand new whatever.
Oh boy.
Part of me just cringes because I would love to get that for my kid. I would love to do that for them.
Wouldn't.
Right? And part of me is like, well, are you mad that they have that and you don't?
Yeah,
are you just admiring it? What are you materialistic? What are all these things? So I've learned to ask more questions, well, tell me about that.
Yeah.
And then as they start talking about it, I can see, okay,
their root motivation.
Why'd they bring it up?
Maybe it was just cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it could have just been innocently like, that was really cool, and not a contentment issue or a jealousy issue.
Right. And if it is a contentment issue, then it's like, listen, this is the United States of America. You too can drive a brand new whatever, it's just
in 10 years.
It's just going to take some work to get there,
right.
And won't it be exciting when you do? So
add that to your vision board.
Yep. Very true.
I really love that. Okay. What's the next one? Oh, what are some of your own struggles with discontentment? This
Oh,
is a fun one.
So real
Every
moms
mom
only.
has these.
I'm gonna be real here. Over the course of the last 30 years, having given birth to 12 children, I have gained and lost about 600 pounds. So for me to sit here and say I've never been unhappy with my physical body, that would just be a darn lie. I think a lot of us struggle with, are we content with our physical body and our physical strength? Not always. So I try to get goals, try to maintain them, or at least work towards them. In this sense, I've hired a health coach who's helped me an awful lot. And if I'm unhappy, I think to myself, well, what can I do right now about that? Well, I can choose to eat healthy this next meal, and I can choose to go out and exercise and
I think
all of
there's
those
a good
things.
point. So discontentment as a whole, I think some discontentment is a really good thing.
Yeah, 100%.
Because it's a motivator.
It is a motivator.
If you're discontent on things that are within your control, such as what you're going to eat today, what you're going to do today, who you're going to hang out with that will impact your contentment or not.
Very true.
Those things are motivators. If you're discontent with things that are outside your control, your husband's work schedule, your weekend sports activities, no time. Like sometimes there's things that are not as controllable. Just think about the line between the motivational things and where you can turn that into fuel versus the things that, okay, that's out of my control. I'm not going to sit here stewing over this, mad about this. What can I do? What can I use?
And I learned some time ago that I can choose to let something bother me or not. Listen, if your child's struggling with an addiction, that's going to bother you. There's no controlling that. But how much are you going to let a relationship with a family member? I'm not talking about your own children here, but I'm talking about a family member that's a little bit outside of your control. How much are you going to let that really ruin you?
Because it could take up all of your mental, these problems can balloon so large.
It can.
In your mind.
I had a sincere problem with a family member back when you were a little girl. Still have a problem with that family member. And the truth is, I remember driving down the road and you were happy and healthy in the back seat and you're just, making your little, toddler 1-year-old sounds. And I was all worked up about this problem. And I looked in my rearview mirror and there you were just smiling so beautifully. And I thought, I'm losing joy over this person when look at what I've got in the back seat. I'm not going to let this bother me one more minute because I'm not changing this person anyways. So struggles with discontentment, emotional, in some ways I have learned this does not have to bother me like it is. I can choose to literally lock it out. Some things you can't. Some things are really big deals and you do have to deal with them. But if you can choose to not let something bother you because you can just check that box and go, no control over this. I'm doing the best I can. I know as far as I can, I've lived at peace.
Do you want control over it? Sometimes
you don't.
It's better just to leave that problem on the table. It's not like if you worked for hours and hours and hours, you would have fixed it.
Right.
Let's look at the effort versus reward on a sliding scale here.
Right.
And, what is actually going to be a motivational mover for discontentment to make a difference versus what is just a discontentment black hole.
Right.
That you'll never be able to get out of that vacuum.
And so the next thing is sometimes, what are some of the struggles with discontentment you face with your spouse? Listen, here's the deal. Your spouse is going to have strengths and weaknesses, just like you have strengths and weaknesses. If you can focus on the strengths, do your best to fill in the gaps and holes for their weaknesses. You won't be able to fill all of them. That's just not really possible. Human nature. But if you can celebrate and see the efforts that they're making in their weaknesses or small moves that they're making towards these goals or things that are important to you, that's really important. A simple explanation or example of this. When David and I got married, we came from two very different backgrounds. My background was my dad was a Marine. If you were 15 minutes early for something, you're already 30 minutes late. And my husband came from the background of if you're supposed to be there at 8, anytime before 9 is totally fine.
That is very true.
Right. And so
that's my husband's side of the family.
Yes.
For sure. They have even a rule. The rule is, if somebody gets to the restaurant first, just order and start eating.
Yeah, what?
I know.
We don't do that.
No, that is exactly what they do. In fact, everybody shows up whenever, and there's people halfway through just starting. We all hang out and leave at the same time.
So that
totally
was
different
really challenging. And
up.
I used to see it like he's not being respectful of my time or anybody else's. He's not understanding that I've got 3 little girls standing here at the door for 45 minutes dressed.
And you got him dressed.
Where's Daddy? We gotta go. You know, and if we show up late, it looks bad on me, on you, on them, on everybody. And, you know, and so I find it took me, I'm sorry to say that it took me a decade, 10 years to finally let this go and just realize, you know what? I can control what I can control. I chose to see it as, because 9 times out of 10, this was true. He was working so hard that he would lose track of time.
Naturally. It
And
was a
so
natural problem. It wasn't evil.
Wasn't I blessed to have a husband who was a hard worker?
Right.
And so sometimes I would tell a little white lie. And if we were supposed to be there at 8, I would say 7:15. Sometimes I would say, I'm leaving at 7:30. I hope you're there by 7:45, 8.
I started doing that too, and that actually started to work.
Yep.
Oh, are we taking 2 cars? And
Yeah.
It's like, what? No. I was
No.
like, whoa,
Yeah.
well, we're
Well,
leaving now.
We're leaving now. Exactly. And then part of it was over time he came to see like it really was important to me, and it really did make a difference how you made people feel if you showed up late or on time or early. They felt very respected. So there was some progress all the way around. But it's a simple explanation as to how I solved some of that discontentment. It's a very simple example. Certainly there are others, and there are things that after 32 years we're still working on.
For sure.
Still working on.
I feel like that's also the purpose of marriage. You know,
Yeah, it's a good
2 imperfect people that are both growing and learning while being together.
Yep. Yep. That's for sure true. That's for sure true.
So how did you handle setting, I'm sure you've never had, unrealistic expectations on yourself as a mom and a wife, and also on others in our family?
Okay. So, I think I came pre-programmed with a whole lot of unrealistic expectations, but here's what I've learned, that life and free will of those that you love has an incredible way of humbling you. Whether you want it or not. I always say there's really only 2 types of people in the world. Those that have had their serving of humble pie and those that have yet to be served. And
I can agree with that.
And being real and authentic, I have eaten so much of it, I could choke on it. I probably have 15 different varieties or recipes of it. And by that, I mean, I've been served a number of ways where I'm like, I never thought this would happen. I never saw that as a repercussion. I never thought that would come across this way. So I've learned an awful lot. How do I handle setting unrealistic expectations on myself? I've been humbled, and therefore I now sit there and say, okay, the standard is this,
Right.
XYZ. This is the standard. But regardless of the standard that I myself can't even meet on a daily basis,
Right.
I'm going to love, encourage my children, my spouse, my teammates, my friends, my coworkers, anyways.
Right.
Anyways. And I'm going to say, hey, this is God's design, or this is the best option, or this is what the scriptures say, or this is what experience has taught me. But I also have to give them the freedom to make these decisions. And then
I feel like a lot of parents struggle with that.
It's very hard. And then when something happens that you're like, I laid it out for you and told you this was going to happen. You never say that, because if you really love somebody, you think, and man, this hurts. I've got my own fair share of spankings in life. This hurts. I need to be with them and encourage them and help them in any way possible. Because God does not say to me on a daily basis, and Lord knows he could, I told you so.
Right.
He does not say that.
There's plenty of room to say that.
Yeah.
Sure.
He says to me, okay, well, now you've come to me with this challenge, and let's work through it together. I'm here with you. I'm right in the mess with you, and that's okay. That's
And I wonder too, because that dealing with discontentment as a whole can come from unrealistic expectations.
Mm-hmm.
You set these crazy, like, I'll just make up a fun example. You set these trip expectations. We're going to Disney World. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be the best.
Yep.
Turns out it's like $5,000. It sucks. It's hot. There's 4 hours the whole time to go to every ride.
And some
I'm
kids
just
get a
making
stomach bug first day.
And you don't get to go to any of the rides. You don't even get to have any of the good food because people are throwing up. I'm just making up this scenario.
Right.
Your discontentment, not only does it stem from the expectation, but
experience.
You can lose
Yeah.
on the few small fun things that are happening. You know, the little kid got to wear Mickey Mouse ears and it looks adorable.
Yeah.
You know, you got one family picture before something awful happened.
Yeah.
Discontentment can be used as a motivator, but if you're in a situation where you had unrealistic expectations, the discontentment is because it's a major fail. The entire idea, trip, plan, not working. Not one thing has gone right. You know, turning it around and reassessing and deciding like, all right, I'm the leader here. I'm the mom. What am I going to do? I'm not going to steal joy. I'm not going to start spouting off, you know, losing it myself. I got to keep everybody together.
Yeah.
You know, that's kind of what I think of when it comes to resetting and finding, you know, things have not gone as planned. So now what do we do? You know?
Well, you know, the Apostle Paul said, I have learned in all things to be content. And
he really dealt with a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I've never been beaten and left for dead. I've never been shipwrecked.
Or imprisoned yet.
Imprisoned, you know, yet.
Happened to any of us.
Could. But the truth is that when I find myself in a situation where I'm discontent, maybe I'm not happy with a certain situation where we are business-wise, or what could be doing for the organization, or how could this kid, you know, improve here or the other. I stop and I think, but how many things do you have to be grateful for right now? And boy, it doesn't take me 30 seconds to name 20 of them. Right. And that helps refocus. And I will also say, in terms of unrealistic expectations, that example that you said about the Disney trip. So we've had,
and I haven't had a Disney trip yet. I'm just bringing that up.
But we've had family trips that have gone so sideways, right? and what
hospital visits?
Yeah, it's terrible. It's terrible. But what I have learned is, in the moment, everybody is mad, angry, frustrated, discontent. But that is not what they remember. 3 months later, when they're talking about the trip, they have the funniest jokes, the funniest takes on it. So the memories are actually sweeter than the actual experience, which thank God. So I'm saying, you know, learn to look at things through, what might I be learning from this? What might God be showing me from this? What might we will look back on and remember about this time? Because even the things that I've told you about, you know, being discontent with a family member and looking at my backseat and seeing you, I remember the sting of how I felt about that family member, but I more so remember that I captured that joy and said, hey, stop. And I can remember exactly where I was in town, where I was driving, and the song we were listening to. It was so clear in my mind, going, hey, wait a minute. You're missing the most precious point in your life because you're focusing on something that you're discontent about, and you can't do a darn thing about it, except for choose not to be discontent about it.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. What's our next question? Oh my gosh. Okay. My only job, answering the questions. When you are spiraling into worldly desires and or discontentment, how are you able to recognize this to realign with the Lord?
Okay, so
that's a loaded question.
It is a loaded question, but it is very simple. A quick exercise in gratitude. What I do have rather than what I don't.
Oh, I love that.
That's very simple. That's an easy one, and I fall into this regular basis.
Yeah.
But I stop and think to myself, you have so much to be grateful for. Even though there's a mess over here and there's a big problem
and a fire there,
we've got all this stuff going on. Like right now, look at what you have to be thankful for. And there's so much. There's so much. Even in the toughest times, there's so much. Yeah.
All of us could use more gratitude for sure, especially in America. Okay, next question. What spiritual disciplines or habits do you have that allow you to keep all areas of your life biblically aligned with Christ at the center? Oh my God, that's not such a... I forgot about this question.
We probably should have edited this one a little bit. Very loaded question because it is impossible to keep all areas. Okay.
What spiritual disciplines or habits do you have that allow you to keep all areas of your life biblically aligned?
I would say you will never have all areas of your life.
I was about to say, I don't even know what you found this question.
There's talk about unrealistic expectations. That's it right there. That's unrealistic. So I've talked about this before, but I really feel like there's 6, 7, 8 spokes of the wheel in your life, and at all times you might be able to have 3, 4, 5 of those spokes in line. There's always 1 or 2.
I mean, 3 would even be a stretch sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes everything's out of whack, and the truth is, Are you making headway anywhere? Celebrate that. But what I'm going to say is, how do I try to keep these things aligned? I really do have some set times in the day that I do things. Now, do not laugh at me, because it is how I do things, and everybody can come up with their own way to do
That's
things.
right.
Okay, so I have a planner. At the top of my planner on the left-hand side, I have a list of things that I keep in a row. And it's mostly done in it's all in code.
Oh.
So QT, did I have my quiet time?
Oh, that's
Devo,
cute.
did I have my devotional with the kids?
Oh.
WO, did I do my workout?
Oh, yeah, you got to get
And then
those
I have,
three
I
in the
have
top.
some other things that are important to me that are listed right there at the top, and I just check those off. So my quiet time, listen, that can be anything from, reading through a chapter of the Bible and just trying to glean one thing, or it might be a specific Bible book that like a devotional that I'm reading through, or if I'm on the go that morning, I hit the ground running and I have too much going on, I might be listening to a sermon. I will count that as my quiet time.
Sermons.
I love YouTube sermons. I love them.
It's
then
easy. I do when I put on my
devotional
makeup.
time with the kids. I really feel that this is super important. I try to, at least 5 days a week, at a meal or time frame during the day, sit down and go over something with the kids. So right now, currently, we're working through the book of Romans. So we're reading aloud. One kid reads the whole chapter aloud. And let me tell you, reading a chapter of Romans is like trying to drink from a fire hose. And so my point is, hey, if you can just tell me a point that stuck out to you today, I will count that a win, and we go around the table.
Cute.
Sometimes it's deeper.
That's easy. That's not a lot of prep right there.
No, it doesn't. Things that do not require me prep. Sometimes I might stop and do something that's a devotional based on a current event. Sometimes it might be more based on something I heard in that sermon or I read that morning that's different.
But I like that one kid reads a chapter.
Yep.
And then everyone says one thing that stuck out. 20 minutes. We're done.
Yeah. And it can even be, sometimes it's 10 minutes, and sometimes it's a lot longer because somebody says something and it sparks this whole conversation, which is of course what you want in the first place.
Right.
But, those devotionals, I really try hard not to give that up. And I think that that's so important because the Bible tells us that we're supposed to teach our children these things, as you walk along the way.
And then everybody is kind of involved in that. It's not just you doing your stuff. The rest of the family to the wind.
Yeah.
It's kind of interactive. And that's around our breakfast meeting, right?
Yeah, we do breakfast. We don't get so many family dinners because of sports and different evening time schedules, but we do wake up and have breakfast together. And then, spiritual disciplines. Listen, I really believe strongly in a good, solid physical workout helps translate things spiritually. First of all, it gets rid of so much anxiety. It can be a depression beater backer. It can be where all of your creativity starts flowing and you start coming up with answers to things.
There's been multiple studies done on that.
Well, I don't know about multiple studies.
It's true.
I only know that when I'm out on a run, I will come up with answers to things, and I will remember to touch base with people or reach out. And, that's often when you or Sarah or Amanda gets 100 texts from me. They're voice texts, so if they sound weird, that's why. But they're me thinking of all these things, and I finish the run. I feel physically stronger, and I feel like I got somewhere, and I stirred a bunch of stuff up, and it feels really good. So, these spiritual disciplines, working out is a spiritual discipline, because whatever we can overcome physically, we can learn to overcome spiritually and emotionally, just like whatever
it's all connected. It's not like it's separated.
It's not separate. It's not separate. So all of these things, aligning those things, I still have several areas of my life that I think I will always struggle on aligning perfectly, but it's a work in progress. And it's always at the top left-hand corner of my planner, and I'm working on it. I'm thinking about it. And none of us are perfect. And I think
as we go through that day, that planner gets filled up.
It does. And the thing of it is too, I just really want to encourage, especially, moms in the thick of it. If you're a working mom or you're stay at home, or you've got young kids, or a young working mom with kids, listen, a quiet time doesn't have to look like everybody says it has to look like.
Yeah, you hear the pastors and they're like, oh, you need 30 minutes to an hour.
Oh, yeah.
Reading the book, meditating, praying, /
listen,
it's like, oh my God, I don't know if I can do
wholeheartedly
that.
admit that before there was such a thing as smartphones and you could read a devotional on your smartphone, I had a devotional sitting on top of my toilet, and I'm sorry to say that's where
that sounds like a great place.
Sorry, but it's true. It's the only 3 minutes of privacy I could get, and that's where it and there was a pencil in it, and I would highlight things and underline them, whatever.
That may be the only 15 minutes some moms get, if any.
If they even get that long. So it doesn't have to be, and I will also say, I've heard from moms, I'm just going to throw this in here. I've heard from moms, I have so much trouble sleeping. I can't turn my brain off at night. I'm so worried about so many things.
Very easy to do.
The way I have combated that in the last decade is, I have a few pastors that I love to listen to, and I'm not going to mention their names here because I don't ever want them to think that I use them to put me to sleep, but their sermons are great. The sermons are actually really good, but I find myself distracted listening to the sermon so much that I stop thinking about the 48 problems that I have to solve before tomorrow morning at 4 a.m. And I'm focusing on what they're saying, and that gives my mind and brain rest, and I fall asleep peacefully. Now, it might take me 2 weeks to get through their hour sermon,
right?
But I'm saying, hey, that's also...
You can't tell them that because they'd be so offended,
yeah,
wouldn't they?
But the truth is, like, that is also a quiet time.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's an easy way to get rid of some of those anxieties because your brain will go wild.
It can. It really can. It can keep you up at night. And if I wake up at 2 a.m, because sometimes I think the Holy Spirit does wake us up in the middle of the night. Whoever comes to mind first, I start praying for them. But if it starts to get a little out of hand and I start to see myself slipping off into crazy town where I've got too many things firing, I just turn that sermon right back on and get right back to it and try and put my brain focused on that and get back to sleep.
That.
Yeah.
That's so cute. That's such a good little habit. Okay, last question. Last one. What is one thing you wish that more women and real moms understood about marriage and motherhood?
Okay.
It's a loaded question.
This is another big loaded question, but I really, really, really wish that more people understood that love is not a feeling. It is a choice, and it is a decision that you make. You can feel love for somebody. Like, you look at baby D and you just can't help but feel all this love just bursting out of your heart when you look at him. But at some point in your life, he's going to do something that is going to hurt, or it's going to scare you. And then because you love him, you're going to make decisions and do things, but also you're going to choose, even though at that moment you might feel really angry or you might feel really hurt, you're going to make a decision to love him no matter what. Your spouse, in the span of a marriage, whether it's 5 months, 5 years, or 50 years, you're going to go through tough things, and you're going to go through challenges that will rock you. I didn't understand that when I first got married. I must have been.
I don't know if anybody when they first get married.
And it's a good thing that you don't.
Right?
Listen, just get married. It's a good thing that you don't. But there have been things over the years that have truly happened in our family that have rocked me to the core. And recognizing that even though I might not feel a whole lot of love at the moment, I might feel a whole lot of hurt or a whole lot of anger, that I was going to choose and I was going to decide to love that person in my actions, even if I didn't feel like it very much at the moment. And how this helps. So I was blessed years ago to make a dear friend in a much older woman who lived in my neighborhood. She was in her mid-90s when we became friends. And she'd lived this incredible life that inspired me beyond words. She'd gotten married very young, 17, 18 years old. Then she got pregnant. Her husband went off to fight in World War II. He was shot down over the English Channel. And here she is, a single mom at 19 years old.
In the 1940s.
Yeah. Now, fast forward, she's a single mom for a long time, takes her education very seriously, goes back to school, gets a master's degree, gets a doctorate degree, things that women weren't really doing back then. And all the while is being pursued by this quite well-to-do, very well-educated man who was successful running a paper mill. Now, she had put off marrying him because he had some struggles that she wanted him to deal with before they got married, but eventually he won her over. I think he chased her for like 15 years. It was a long time. But they got married and they had 2 children. And so now she's got 3 children that are, one's pretty much grown and a new young family. And I remember asking her, you were married to your husband for, at the end of it all, let's say 40 years.
Right.
Tell me about that. How did you do it? What's the secret? And she said something that really changed how I looked at everything. She said, well, there was about 5 years that was hell.
Really?
And I'm like, okay, when you say 5 years in the course of 40 years, like, was it 5 years, like spread out 3 months here, a
Right.
year
Is it like
here,
an
2
accumulative
months over here?
5 years?
She said, no, start to finish, it was 5 years. Like, there was 5 years where I thought, oh my gosh.
Really?
And I was like, you stuck it out for 5 years of, and she said it was
Because you don't know it's only 5 years when
when
you're
it
in it,
starts.
right?
You don't know if it's going to be a month, a year. And she said, I had purpose that I was going to love him regardless, and I was going to choose every day to love him in my actions and in my prayers and in my efforts and in my efforts with our children. And she said, eventually we pulled out of it. And I thought,
No way.
I don't know that I would be able to. I mean, I think year
Because
two,
you don't know that it's 5 years. Could be 50
I
years. Could be
think
3
year
years.
two,
Could
I
be
would be
5.
looking at it going, this is never going to get better. Definitely year three, for sure by year four. Year five, I don't know that I wouldn't have,
Yeah.
made a move towards ending the relationship, but she didn't. And it taught me something that, if you're fortunate enough to be married for any certain length of time, you're going to have hard times. And that's not to say that there's never an excuse for divorce, because there are certainly reasons. Certainly reasons. There are biblical reasons. There are certainly reasons. Okay, this is not me.
This is not divorce or marriage.
Anybody.
Yeah.
No. All I'm saying is that it taught me a perspective that she chose to love this man, and the world is a better place for it, because what these two were able to accomplish together literally moved mountains. And there's not a country on the planet today that isn't affected by the work they accomplished together. And if she had given up on that relationship, there would be, and I'm not exaggerating at all, thousands of lives that would have ended prematurely. There would be thousands of people that went without medical care. They founded a very large charity that is still making massive contributions to the world, medically and through humanitarian aid. So all that to say, you don't know how long the challenge is going to be, but her perspective was, well, she goes, I still basically got an A grade, because she had been a teacher. And I was like, well, when you put it like that, and she was right. She's like, it's at least a high B. I was like, oh my gosh.
Oh my
goodness.
goodness. So, did she go through that like early on in the marriage? Or
no,
was it later?
I think it was, 15, 18 years in.
Oh my goodness.
So halfway through, and so.
So what, they were in their 50s?
Yeah, I think that I really wish more people would understand.
It's a pretty transitional time period.
That love is a choice. That also another thing really important, I don't think a lot of parents realize this, and you see it especially on the sidelines at sports. Listen, as parents, we invest heavily in our children, right? We invest with our money, our time, our efforts.
Yeah.
We invest heavily because we love them so much, and we want them to. I remember my dad always saying, you stand on my shoulders and you jump.
Yeah, we want our kids to do well.
We want them to go way higher, way farther, way faster, way better than we ever did or could, right?
We're dedicated almost entirely to making sure that happens.
Right. Now, here's where the trick comes in. Are you doing that out of pride because you
like
want
from the human achievement standpoint, like my kids are going to do better?
I'm a good mom.
Kids.
I'm a good mom because my kid got to the Olympics, or I'm a good mom because my kid got into XYZ school, right?
Yeah.
Are you doing it from that? Are you truly doing it because you want it for their best? Sometimes it's very difficult to ascertain, but you really do have to ask yourself that question over and over again. And here's one way to check yourself at the door. You have got to remember that as much as you have poured into your children and taken them to the practices and had the long talks with the coaches and spent the midnight hours listening to them talk and opine and whatever about all their problems, because they only ever want to talk to you after 11:30 at night, especially when they're teenagers, that you have to recognize that ultimately their success is theirs, not yours. You get to enjoy them reaching those goals. You get to celebrate with them reaching those goals, but that's not your success, that's theirs.
Yeah. That's very difficult, I feel like. I think
you see it especially on the sidelines of sports.
Especially because they're your offspring.
Yeah.
So you think it is your success in a way because they came from you. But it's just so not true.
It's not true, and it's really important because...
I mean, there's free will. Children make their own choices.
Yep.
They make their own choices to be the best version of themselves or the worst version of themselves. And it's like, you could have done every single thing right. And the
still
child still makes decisions that you go, oh my
that
gosh,
lead
you
to
have
really,
no idea.
really big problems. And that's why it
Right.
hurts so bad when they
Right.
make bad decisions, because you really have sacrificed a lot for them to have success or to learn from their failures, what have you. But it's really important if a parent can recognize that, yes, you got them to the play practice, you paid for the play lessons or for the drama lessons.
Which is not a small effort on your part.
No, it takes a lot on your part to be able to do these things, but their success is theirs. You contributed.
That contributes to discontentment as well. If you're unhappy with
the outcome of that investment.
Yeah, exactly. It's as a parent, you aren't going to invest in your child whether or not they are successful or not. That's
anyways
the goal,
right,
to give them everything they can to survive and grow and continue and become their own amazing person. But yeah, that would definitely,
that's a challenge. And then the other thing I'm going to say is that while motherhood lasts forever, from the time you find out that you're expecting until you draw your last breath, your motherhood never stops. But the joys never cease, the worries never stop. But after the bulk of your parenting is done, and this obviously varies with different children and different challenges that you face and overcome, you need to have a purpose for yourself and a relationship with your husband. If you don't, this is where you find women who are, my last kid is grown and flown, and I feel literally useless now. My children went off to college, and I'm way too over involved in their life. We cannot do that.
Right.
My children have grown, but I'm trying to control every aspect because I'm still the mom.
I actually did hear a mom say something a little bit humorous about that.
Okay.
It was an awful joke because this lady was very upset with her mother-in-law.
Okay.
I have a lovely mother-in-law. Could never be upset with her.
Your mother-in-law walks on.
But this lady was very upset with her mother-in-law because her mother-in-law said something like, well, I'm his mother, about her husband. Oh. She's like, you're his mother, but you haven't parented him in like 30 years.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
I'm a mother. I'm still parenting my 15-year-old. There's a huge difference between the level of motherhood right now.
Yes.
Yeah. And I thought it was really cute because it was, touching on the point that her mother-in-law didn't have a purpose. Yeah. There was no purpose left.
Yeah.
No dreams from when they were younger that they were still working on. No passions for any kind of business or entrepreneurship. Not saying that you have to have that at all. But I'm just saying her child was her only thing in life. And the success of her child was very important, which is great.
Yeah.
But there was nothing left at all for her to do when her child was completely well past all the way grown.
Other than that.
Other than...
Which you can find, right? In
maybe your purpose is your grandchildren or something like that.
Maybe it's a new career. Maybe it's in serving the community. Maybe it's in serving at your church. Maybe it's...
But you do have to have something.
You really do, because if you don't, you will,
you feel alone.
You will slide into a dangerous place, either expecting too much of your grown children. I wish I could talk to every one of you grown girls every single day, but I have to respect that some of you want to talk every day at 7:45 in the morning.
That's
and
me.
Some of you want to touch base like every 10 days, maybe 2 weeks. We're fine.
Yeah.
Some of you intense periods of conversation and then
ghost mode
for
2 months.
I don't even know. So recognizing that, but I just think that if you don't,
well, it also helps you build your own community, because I feel like when you have children and they're younger, it's so easy because your kids' friends are your friends. So you've got every little sports group as your friends, all of their little church friends, their parents are all your friends. You've got little built-in communities as your children grow.
And then they grow.
But let's just say your kid's 25, they're out of college.
Yeah.
Your friends, their kids are out of college. They're maybe off doing who knows what, retired. You're left kind of alone with just you, your husband, and maybe the little old dog that's on its last leg.
Yeah. So I would say, find a purpose well in advance of that, so that you have a healthy balance with your kids, and you
that would
can
make a
help
big difference in contentment.
Stave off that kind of discontentment, because if you don't, you're going to be discontent with how much your kid does or doesn't call you. You're going to be discontent with their level of success or what's going on. You're going to be discontent with your spouse because they can't fill all of your needs and it's not their job.
Yeah.
So
and then we go into menopause.
Yeah, we got Well, I don't know what kind of idea this was to have kids, growing off and going independent aging parents and menopause all at once.
I know.
That is a question I might have for Jesus when I get there.
It's not a good deal. That's all
But,
I'm saying.
You know, one sure thing is to make sure that you have built a community or have a little bit of a plan heading into that part of your life. And maybe you're really looking forward to it. Maybe you've been holding the reins back on your career, and once Junior's gone, you are just going
Ready
to
to
unleash it on the
go.
world.
They
you know?
turn 18 and you
are like,
take the job.
yeah,
you
you're
know?
like, here's the car, go to college, see you later. I'm going to go attack this over here. And like,
That's
I
awesome.
don't think that that's unhealthy. I think that that's
Yeah,
probably
super fun.
a good way to look at it. Listen, motherhood, marriage, all of these things can be really challenging. And there's so many ways that contentment, discontentment can really be a struggle with ourselves, with those that we love the most, for all kinds of different challenges. And what I want to encourage you is that when you start to feel that itch of discontentment, there's a problem, there's something I'm jealous of, there's something I'm afraid of, there's something I'm worried about. Really, one of the biggest answers is going to be turning around and focusing on gratitude.
Right.
It's going to be recognizing that love is a choice. It's going to be recognizing that your spouse, your children have free will. There are certain things you can control or have a modicum of control over. There's a lot of things that you can't. And when you find yourself slipping into this pit that can really be quite consuming, as much as you can, use gratitude. And I mean, you've seen me do it before. I start singing some silly, song from, Baptist Sunday school when I was 6 years old. That's my way of battling off.
And I feel like there's so many more ways to be discontent than to be content. Yeah. So it's like it is a battle that you can hit all the time.
Yeah. So anyways, I want to thank all of you for joining us with this simple question and answer, and never, ever hesitate to reach out to us through our website, through social media, and ask us questions, because we'll continue to compile these questions and answers. And all I can do is give you my experience as a real mom. I've been super blessed to learn a lot of lessons on this.
And we're going to work on having even more real moms on the show, because we also do want to hear from you guys and, make it more conversational and more like a community too. So
thank you for joining us at Real Moms Only.